Hello and welcome to GM Tips. GM Rick here. We're on the very new OBS software that was recommended to me, and I really appreciate it by a great follower of the stream and somebody who wants to do some collaboration work. I'll leave that TBD for you. So this week I wanted to do a little bit of focusing on basically how to advance your GM skills as a GM. And it comes from actually a really great book um, from Cobalt Press on the game mastery end of things. And so I wanted to just, it's Cobalt Guide to Game Mastering. And this one is actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the points because Michael E. Shea and I, or Shea, I don't know how you pronounce it, Michael. You have to tell me sometime if you watch the cast. He's a longtime gamer and game developer and GM, and he has some great points that I really totally agree with when it comes to game mastery. And so you can hear mini GM in the background with the lovely Tom and Jerry. So a couple of the things he hit, and I really agree with this very first point to the nth degree. Always keep learning. And really, I agree with that point. We are, as human beings in general, always learning. We never have everything figured out. We never have everything expertly done and crafted the way that it should be. Even the most experienced of us still need to continue learning and developing. An old friend of mine, and again, you guys have heard me refer to this, I think, before in other GM tip videos, a salesperson who taught me early on at Southwest Battery, where I used to work. Tom was a great second generation Irishman, and he would say this with his Irish lilt to his voice. He would say, Rick, you will always be learning, and the idea is to keep a learner's mindset. He says, if you decide that you want to quit learning and that you finally know it all, it's time to hang up your hat on the hat rack and go out and golf. And he was dead on right, I believe. Whether it's been in my sales, my engineering background, or in game mastering, the idea of a learner's mindset always makes us better. And how are ways we can learn? Well, some ways that he talks about here, and I'm on my iPad, basically. And I want to quote some things out of here. It says, regardless of your long-term experiences, there is so much more you can learn. You may have more overall experiences than other GMs, but they're always different experiences, and you can learn from everyone. First thing is be open to others' experiences. So when you're talking to your players, when you are at maybe a group gaming thing like a Gen Con coming up, Gen Con 50, or you're going to another type of con and you're around other GMs, watch and see how they work with players. Watch and see how they handle the playing of the NPCs, the actual rollout of the adventure itself, because a lot of times these are pre-printed adventures. So you get to see how other GMs work with pre-printed adventures. If it's a home-based game, go watch a couple people's homebrew campaigns and get some great ideas from them. We are always learning. We are always honing our craft, and learning from others' experiences is a great way to learn. Maybe you go out and have a beer with them and sit down, or a glass of wine, or a smoothie, or whatever you want to have, a cup of coffee in my case, and you just talk about experiences and great things you remember, great ways you handled things in different experiences. And you can learn a lot. And I suggest this, always keep a pad of paper or a notebook with you and a pencil or a mechanical pencil, a pen. Jot down things. Say, hey, you know, that's a great idea. Do you mind if I jot that down? Because I'd really love to use that sometime in mine. And just take brief notes. You don't want to be copious. I love being copious and note taking, but really we won't do it there. And I get a glare from Maxi GM. GM Mistress, as I call her, the mistress of GMing. That
mistress of your bed.
Oh, hey, there she is.
Well, you better not put me on camera.
And play with other GMs, not literally, not physically. She would smart off that way. But play in their games, sit in on some sessions, learn from other GMs on how they handle a situation. You know, playing once in a while on other GMs' game systems is great for that. I love being a player from time to time, whether it's Pathfinder Society or other systems, and once in a while being that player, because you can learn a lot watching the person GMing. And again, one of the things he says, sure, some of these games might suck. Of course they might. You can follow the wise interview technique of Truman Capote and ask yourself some questions about why the game isn't living up to your standards. Why do you think it sucks? Why are they not having a good time? What are the other players feeling? Is everyone having a bad time or is it just me? So sometimes in our infinite arrogance, and we have that, God forbid, we'd be arrogant, we think that we could be doing better than the GM who's GMing us. And then we lose track of playing the game and actually experiencing it and seeing what is fun about how they do things. So keep that in mind. Uh, and I love this one. Watch live gameplay videos. There are enough of them out on the net for different things. YouTube has tons of them. Some of mine are up there to my Mistress GM's chagrin, my wonderful fiance's chagrin. There are others ones up there. You don't want to touch it. See, you're gonna get a little commentary. There are other GMs who have done their sessions, and you can always look at whether it's on Twitter, they'll tell you there, or they'll tell you sometimes on Facebook in the different groups. There are different things you can watch that are out there. And the great part is they often will do maybe games you want to do. So like, say you want to do Strahd's, the whole Strahd thing, the Curse of Strahd. There are people who've run it, so you get to see how it was run and different ideas that were put into it. The Yawning Portal. The Yawning Portal. I always get lots of commentary when she's home. The Yawning Portal. And other things. Oh, we're in a good mood today. You guys are getting all kinds of little things.
No, I didn't realize you had a cup up here with water on it.
Yeah, that happens. Study other game systems. So don't just play D&D. Don't just play Pathfinder. Don't just play Starfinder. Don't just play Savage Worlds. Don't just play Numenera. Try other systems.
Don't just play My Patience.
Don't just play Her Patience. Always good. You want to play different systems because different systems will challenge you into how you handle and GM things. So keep that in mind. Oh well, we lose a broomstick. Conduct small experiments. I love this one. This is kind of interesting. As you watch other GMs and study other game systems, you might pick up all sorts of ideas to incorporate in your game. When you see something new, you might try to figure out how to do this, how you can do this for a single scene or a single encounter. So, for example, what does a battle look like on the side of a waterfall or high above a city or on floating discs? So you may want to try some scenarios that challenge things and introduce new things. Maybe airships. We were talking a lot about Abney Park and their role-playing game and the Airship Pirates. So you might want to do an airship combat in your game, which would be really cool. Oh, yeah, or the Fire Nation. So you can do an airbender or a firebender type of thing with your kineticists. Kind of fun, right? You can try different things that you see. Ask for feedback. Ask your players for feedback. I do that a lot. How'd you think about this? What did you think about this? How do you think this went? There's chuckling up there. Feedback is good. Sometimes feedback is bad sometimes. But always listening to the feedback, you'll hear different things that may help you or may cause you to be better at what you do. And so feedback either way, it's always good to listen to it and get feedback. I love this one. Check your ego. It's hard not to be proud of your longevity when role-play game. You might have been playing some 30 or 40 years, longer than many new GMs have been alive. That's me. Going on 49, I've been alive longer than most of you have, unfortunately. That's not significant, but that's also necessarily an important factor to being a great GM. It may or may not be in this case. In fact, the ego, yeah, exactly. The ego might get in the way of getting better. With age is irritation. And that's true. Sometimes we get irritated because we think we know better. And that's when you go back to point A, always be a learner. Our ego gets in the way a lot of times of how we GM. That's why we rub with other players that we don't often um, agree with. That's why Scott and I rub in my game sometimes, because Scott has a way of knowing what he knows, but he doesn't always know. But because of that reason, I get annoyed. I have learned to quit getting annoyed and just listen to what he has to say. And if there's something I don't agree with, I check with the people at the table to make sure that that's correct or incorrect, and we have a group consensus. And what that does is it keeps my ego from getting in the way and getting angry at his style of play. It's the best way of doing it. Now, it didn't start that way, and you'll hear the heck. That's where you hear the heck up there from Kim. She'll tell you I wasn't always tolerant of it. In fact, a lot of times I get irritated. And that's my ego getting involved. Instead of just saying,
Well,
you know what?
I got a big ego.
So, so instead of finding better ways, accept your personal preference. The hobby of ours is limitless possibilities and keeps you coming back to it each week and hopefully for the rest of our lives. So you're going to have preferences that you're going to have in a game. Keep in mind, you do yourself an injustice and the hobby when you assume that all games are like yours. They're not. They're different. Everybody is different depending on the personality, how they run things, how they see things, how they perceive things. So again,
It's like people color differently.
it is. Yeah, I love this. This is great feedback. You get great little feedbacks from Kim over there.
Sorry,
And
do I need to shut up?
no. Embrace new demographics. Since the beginning of the hobby, it's been dominated by, guess what? Dun dun dun. White guys like me and male.
You crackers.
I know. In the past decade, it has changed, and you can do your part by supporting diversity. And it says, invite somebody in of a different belief, a different sexuality preference. So bring an LGBTQ gamer in. Open up the doors, open up the possibilities. Maybe you have more women in your game than men. Ooh, what a possibility. Maybe you have um, more same sex oriented gamers in there. So they bring a lot of flair. Um, you know what? The great creativity. Yeah, my fiance, she laughs. That's because she has friends that are, and I do too. I gotta say, sometimes the same-sex guys are the most creative of all. I love them. There's a flamboyant flair to many, and I love that because it brings a colorfulness to the game in a good way. Very outgoing, very gesturing, very um, just verbally oriented, social, and it brings a new dynamic. I love the fact that in one of my games I had um, a polyamorous gamer, and she was funny because she said, "Can I flirt with this with her male character flirting with other male characters, female, the other?" I'm like, "Sure," and it actually got them more information and background on the main baddie than if they didn't have something like that in their game. The players hadn't thought about that. And they were wondering where to go. They were just kind of following the path. And she just went out there and said, "Hey, let's find out more about this commander. Let's go flirt with this person. Let's find out what this place is like." Tremendously well done. And it opened another guy to do the same thing, where his character flirted with another guy character. I'm not saying it has to go into some real blue areas. You can regulate that as you see fit as a GM, especially if you've got little ears around. But you can allow there to be some of that outside of the box creativity. And that'll come with different players and different demographics. Okay, so recapture fantasy or science fiction, depending on what you're doing. Recapture the flair of it. Make your fantasy true fantasy. Make your science fiction true science fiction, where it reaches the boundaries of reality, but yet has some sort of a boundary, because even those have boundaries around them that are binding. So maybe you use ley line magic. Maybe you use warp drives. Maybe you use black hole technology or gate technology. There's all kinds of cool things that you can introduce to your game that'll bring new flair. And so those are some different things in there. Now, one of the things that also they talked about is really doing great planning. And this, there's a whole section on this from pages 60 61 to 66 by Monica Valentelli. And she talks about the fact of planning out a campaign, planning out a game, being good at planning. You don't want to take too much time because, as you'll hear from the chagrin of my fiance over there, too much planning means no time with your family. So keep that in mind. But you want to have some planning. You want to not just walk into there every week not planning for the session. Take some time, reorient yourself, think about it. Yes, it is. It's literally a part-time job, what we do as GMs. So going in and flying by the seat of your pants won't always do the thing you need it to do. Keep that in mind. So those are just some things of thinking outside the box and pushing your GM skills. There's so much more, and I'm going to show you the front of the page of this book because I think if you haven't gotten it, I don't agree with everything necessarily with it, but it is a good guide as a whole because again it covers different systems. It's system agnostic, and we need that because no matter what you're doing, no matter how you're GMing, we haven't figured it all out. We started out with D&D 1. We started out with Gamma World. We started out with Traveler and the old systems. Now we're in a different era with so many choices. You got Open Legends, you got Cypher System, you got Savage Worlds, you got Fate, you've got, I mean, I could go into so many different systems. They are there. And so you need to think of it from a system agnostic point of view of how do I get to be better no matter what I run. And so those points are the points that I throw in there for you. Thanks again. Appreciate it. Have a great week from me, fiance GM, and mini GM. We say have a great week.